We have film of what very nearly amounts to a real miracle. Survivors of a plane crash in the Chilean Andes. The plane went down 10 weeks ago. The 45 people aboard were given up for dead.
When the news broke in 1972, the world couldn't believe it. A new Netflix film, Society of the Snow, revisits the terrifying events.
You are listening to Fruitless, a podcast hosted by me, Josiah Sutton. This is episode 27, Society of the Snow, featuring Finch. Welcome, everybody, to Fruitless. I'm Josiah, and I am joined today by old Mammonburg co-host of mine, Finch.
Hello, it's good to be on finally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you haven't actually been on Fruitless, right? You're the only Mammonburg host that hasn't appeared yet. So
I know.
So finally rectifying
Finally.
That. But yeah.
What a topic we have to cover today.
That's right. Yeah, so you brought to me the Society of the Snow, which has been a movie that you've been kind of obsessed with the last few weeks. It seems months, however long.
It's been a few weeks. This film has become this film. I'll just be frank. It's deranged me in the way Children of Men deranged Chris. If you get what I mean. Chris
Barker.
Chris Barker.
Yeah, go back and listen to the Children of Men episode if you want to understand how that movie has deranged Chris Barker.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, you've become really obsessed with it.
It's certainly my Roman Empire, yeah.
Well, and it also seems like it hasn't been a huge source of discourse in the Anglosphere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I knew it was nominated for an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked two Oscars, and it looked good, and that was it. I wasn't probably going to watch it anytime soon.
Yeah,
was,
the sort of discourse around this movie has been very interesting. I've been following it for a couple weeks. It's very exclusively in the Spanish-speaking world, but it's become very much like a major cultural phenomenon there. Which it's insane to me because you're not hearing anything about it in the United States.
Yeah, well, like proximity wise, you would expect. It feels like of like, I don't know, of like global discourses happening in certain languages. I feel like Spanish speaking stuff would be more likely to trickle over into English compared to like other stuff, and it just hasn't. And I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, the way I stumbled upon this discourse was very interesting. I watched the film, I think, sometime in early January, and I thought it was fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, this is really good. It's on Netflix. I wonder if anybody's talking about it. And so, I went to Twitter because that's usually where a lot of people go to discuss, culture, art like this. I looked up Society of the Snow, and there was a little bit of conversation about it, just like 200, note posts, just people being like, oh, that was really good. And then I was like, well, what if I typed the name of the movie in Spanish? And I did that, and Twitter suddenly caught on fire. I was seeing viral post after viral post. I was seeing memes. I was seeing fan edits, and I was seeing fan cams like you would not believe.
Yeah, you I think you made the comment that it was the equivalent to like Saltburn's discourse, like kind of exploding in the English world the last few weeks. But like this movie has been that in the Spanish speaking world.
Yeah. This could even just be that like they're Oppenheimer, maybe.
Oh yeah.
Something like that. Just because I don't think Saltburn is a very good movie, but that's my
Well, no, I'm not saying I don't think I'm not making that. I'm comparing the discourses. I have not seen Saltburn yet, so
no, I would say that's like the same level of fanfare. Yeah, no, it was just crazy to witness, honestly. It was very what a demented situation we find ourselves in, because I don't even know how to tonally approach this, because the event itself is so awful. Like, it's something I would not wish on my worst enemy. And the movie is absolutely beautiful. It's heart-rending. And then you have going on online about it.
Yeah. Well, you know, like, just this I don't know, this movie about this awful tragedy, and then also like half of the Spanish speaking like social media is people that just really want to fuck the actors, just like really.
Honestly, I get it.
Well, before we get, because you gestured at this as based off a real story, we talk about the movie a little bit here, like the actual movie, before we get into the domino effect it's had on discourse. Right. Yeah, so it is a it came out last year, technically, right?
Technically, yeah, it just released
right at the turn
right
of the
at the very end. I think coincidentally it opened in theaters, or maybe intentionally, it opened in theaters on December 22nd, which was the first wave of rescues for the survivors.
Oh, okay. And yeah, so it's an adaptation of a real case in which a flight containing a rugby team flying from Uruguay to Chile crash landed in the Andes, and they were stranded out there for how long was it? Like 70 days, something like that?
72 days, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So what did you know about the Andes flight disaster going into this?
All I knew going into this is, the other aspect here is of course this case has been adapted into a movie before, which was in the 90s, and stars Ethan Hawke. And Ethan Hawke is one of the actors I'm like trying to work on eventually seeing all of the movies he's been in. It's an interesting. So because of that, I've seen some weird young Ethan Hawke movies, and one of those weird young Ethan Hawke movies is Alive. 1993, I think, is when it came out, around the same time as like Reality Bites.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and it's fine as long as you don't think too hard about the fact that this tragedy that happened to a bunch of Latino people is by a very WASP cast. Like, this Ethan Hawke in his most like Reality Bites 90s Gen Xer American boy voice going hey, how's it going, Roberto?
That sounds not great.
Yeah, but like it's very very competent 90s movie. It's like it's what's the fuck? It's Frank Marshall. It's the guy who directed Congo. Like, if that gives you perspective. Arachnophobia. A lot of those, like, nobody's favorite movie, but it's like it's a 90s movie. Right. It does the job. It's a journeyman kind of.
The 90s.
Oh, sorry. So everything I know is from that movie. I haven't like read anything. I haven't read any books about the actual case or anything.
Yeah, I went into this knowing next to nothing about it. I actually think I stumbled on the case like a little earlier. Well, I guess you can't call it a case. It's more of a, I stumbled upon information about the tragedy, actually listening to last podcast on the left.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because they actually released an episode, like, I think in December about it, or a few episodes. I was like, this is interesting. So I did look into it, and then I saw, oh wow, there's a movie coming out about it. What a weird coincidence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I came into this movie not knowing a lot about the tragedy, and now I feel like I know too much about it, just because of all of the information that has been dumped on me in the past few weeks.
I think a notable aspect of it too is, when I watched Alive does not make, because it is just not invested in making this like in a place, you know what I mean? Like in a historical time. Doesn't really care about that. It's more just about the mechanics of people surviving in the Arctic.
Right.
Because of that, I never crossed my mind to think about, what was going on when this happened? An early 70s flight of Uruguayans going to Chile in what, 71?
72.
72, right.
Yeah.
Year before like most of Latin America descends into fucking military juntas and fascist dictatorships. And so what I do like about Society of the Snow, into the movie is in one of the opening scenes, we see the protests, we see the
Right.
workers and the students rioting in the streets and stuff.
No, yeah, I think it's very good. I really do like how it sort of fits this tragedy into the historical context of what's going on in Latin America at that time. It's not a lot because obviously the film focuses mostly on the tragedy itself.
Being in the Andes, yeah.
Right, being in the Andes, people dying, having to make these unimaginable choices to sustain yourself. But I did like that. I liked that it sort of put our protagonists like in the context of their society. These were upper middle class, well-educated guys. We had rugby players, and then they invited along their friends, which were a bunch of students. I know that Nando Parrado's sister and mother joined him, and unfortunately they did perish very sadly. But so I liked that. And I think it's sort of interesting to think that these guys who are sort of in the higher classes of society sort of just have all of their, power, I don't even know if this is the right word, but all of their power sort of taken from them in an instant. And they have to rely on each other.
Yeah. Learning solidarity or whatever. Through probably the language they would have the most access to, which is their Catholic faith, a lot of them, which is a big part of it as well.
Oh yeah. This movie is deeply Catholic. It's a very Catholic film.
And it's kind of funny though, because I think the two things that I wish the movie did more with, and then we can get into the actual thing, is really the politics and the religion. And I like the little bit that's there. I just wish there was a little more.
Right.
But we'll get that. Like I mentioned, let's get in the movie because we haven't even mentioned the cannibalism yet.
Oh, God.
Like the main thing.
Yeah.
So most of the movie is, like you had mentioned, set in the Andes, in the Arctic, and it's a survival thriller essentially, right? I mean, it's about the process of them having, after their plane crashes, kind of needing to work together or whatever. And then of course the reason that this story became so sensationalized and why it has stayed in kind of the public imagination is that they eventually very carefully had to resort to cannibalism.
Right. I believe it's called something different if you eat like just the dead, like you're not murdering people.
Yeah, somebody I ran into something that had made a comment about how it's better to, or it would be better to call it and I think it's anthropophagy.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Anthropophagy. I think the last podcast guys mentioned that too. But
human eating. They engaged in eating human flesh. They did not murder people and devour them. It was a very conscious decision.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like the Franklin expedition or the Donner Party. This was very
this was like people who were in the process of dying said, I consent to being eaten once I'm dead. Like stuff like that happens.
Oh my God. Just what an unimaginable situation to be in. I just gotta say. Yeah. Like that's not, this is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. I actually did try to read some of the book in preparation for this episode. Society of the Snow by Pablo Vierci, I believe is Vierci. I'm gonna try and get back to it at some point, but like I had to put it down because some of what he has in there is some of the worst shit I've ever read. Just nothing like this had ever happened before. There were apparently a lot more crashes of this nature in the Andes, and nobody survived prior to this event.
Which you mentioned was partially the US's fault, right?
Right. This is technically partially our fault. The airplane, it's a Fairchild model, I believe. Fairchild's an American manufacturer, and these planes were actually known to go down a lot. Like I believe it was like a 33% crash rate or something.
But we decided to sell those to Uruguay anyway, didn't we?
Yeah. Josiah, it's all about the grind set.
It's all about that grind set.
It's pretty amazing how the United States just can export mass death to Latin America, not even like intentionally, just without even trying.
Right. The intentional mass death is the next year.
Right.
72 is all about the accidental mass.
It was the soft lunch.
Yeah. Oh man.
I loved this film. Of the ones I've seen of the award season contenders, which admittedly not a lot. I haven't seen Zone of Interest yet, but that's my favorite 23 movie thus far. Yeah. Yeah. But this one I really just loved it. I don't know. It's just like this film was like a punch to the stomach, to be honest with you. Just the way it's told, the acting in this is superb. Visual effects are amazing. Camera shots, which I know you appreciated, the cinematography. Yeah. Makeup is unbelievable. They got like the injuries of wind. Have you ever gotten windburn, Josiah?
Yeah. Not bad, but yeah.
And I've gotten bad windburn skiing. It's hurts so bad. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent.
No, you're good. But like, no, and the makeup design, you're totally right too, because what I think having watched Alive before this was actually kind of an interesting experience, because this is a much better movie than Alive is. Again, Live functions as what it needs to do as a 90s movie talking about, a 90s big budget movie talking about an event like this. But this movie has like a lot more like subjective filmmaking. You feel a lot more stuck in the situation with them, as Alive is very like just kind of watching them do things. You don't think about the camera angles much as like this movie. It'll do that thing, that like Terrence Malick thing with like the wide angle lenses getting shoved right up in someone's face. And you feel claustrophobic with them because of it.
Yeah, it really emphasizes like the panic that they're feeling.
And then the makeup design fits into that as well, because I don't think Alive had nearly as upsetting, I would say. Like this movie is more upsetting than Alive is, despite both of them being about people getting stranded in like an Arctic setting and resorting to cannibalism. Like Alive or was that?
Yeah, I don't think the Andes are in the Arctic. Well, Arctic.
They're not conditions. Arctic. Arctic conditions, I should say. Yeah, because they're not actually Arctic, right? But but like Alive is like you. I got the impression they just did a little bit of cannibalism because of Alive, and with Society of the Snow, you just see like the bones and shit. It's a lot more harrowing.
It's rough. Oh man, it's so rough. And then when the fate of some certain individuals, you're just like, oh man. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I saw this movie once and I cried for 5 minutes at a certain scene, which I'm sure you know the one. And then I saw this like about 20 minutes, or finished this about 20 minutes prior to us recording this. Cried again.
Yeah, you watched it. Yeah. Oh my God.
I actually like almost cried several times, but God, there's just like this one scene that just every single time. Let's actually get into it.
Yeah. So what happens?
Yeah. Well, warning, spoilers for 50-year-old historical events.
Right. So you have this rugby team it's following this rugby team who are flying to Chile.
It's a very cheap flight. Yeah.
Yes.
They invite a lot of their friends and family along. The establishing shots, or the establishment of the characters, I thought was great. I have to say, as a side note, Bayona knocked it out of the park with the casting of this movie. I know that I believe it was like the Netflix Instagram or something like that was like showing like the side-by-side comparisons of the actors to the actual. They really look like these guys. Really similar. Yeah. Like the guy who plays Roberto Canessa could be his son.
Right. And I gathered that I know that, at least according to Wikipedia, I think it was that what the Bayona like record like 100 hours of interview footage with the surviving members of this and stuff like that. And then you had also mentioned some of the actual survivors appear as extras in the early scenes.
They do. Nando Parado does in the early airport scene. Roberto Canessa is there at the end. He's actually one of the doctors who's like guiding the actor playing him into the hospital, which I thought was very cool. Carlitos Paez is playing his father. He's the one who lists off the survivors' names. I know a few of the other survivors. I can't name them off the top of my head right now, but I know a few of the other survivors are also
Also make
cameoing in this.
appearances. That's
So
cool.
yeah, this is a very cool piece, I think, in that it is the first one that uses the real names of the victims as well as the survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe in Alive they used like different or slightly different names or edited them or something like that.
Yeah, at least they changed some of them because really the only ones that are consistent are the big. Is it the big? I think it's the main two
Yeah,
that eventually do hike through the Andes and get out.
yeah. Nando and
Um,
Roberto, yeah.
those ones are those two people are played by like they're use their real names and stuff. Ethan Hawke, of
Mhm.
course, playing
Yeah,
Nando. Yeah.
yeah. So Bayona got the full consent of the survivors' families to portray them in this movie, which I think
Which is
kind of,
pretty crazy. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's really a testament of how hard and how carefully he sort of worked at this material, like to honor
Yeah.
everybody involved in this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean that's because that's something that a lot of movies about tragedies usually don't
mm,
do is get the consent of the
yeah,
survivors.
yeah. This movie, it's not an easy watch. But it's not like it doesn't feel like it's exploitation at any point.
No, no.
Yeah, no,
Um
it's not sensationalized at all. It's very straightforward.
yeah, and I think that comes out in the cannibalism especially because I
Mhm.
think there's like you could imagine like if a Italian director in the 70s made this a movie about this event.
God.
You know, it would have a lot more with
Mm.
the cannibalism. It would show a lot more.
God. Yeah. Sad. So establishment of the characters I thought were great. I thought the old Christians rugby team, the establishment of that,
Yeah.
really good. Showcases all the personalities of the key players really well. And then I really, really liked how they introduced Numa. Numa Turcati,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Numa Turcati, the protagonist. It's him sitting in a church listening to a sermon on Jesus in the wilderness.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That was what the sermon was. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's 40 days and 40 nights in
No,
the world.
which no, that's really good. That's
Yeah,
really nice
yeah,
detail. You
yeah.
also have like I gestured at earlier the establishment of their class status. Like it doesn't do a ton with it, but it implies it
Mhm.
with just you know, you have the outside the left wing protests going on, the workers and the students, and
Right,
that's happening in the background while they're you know smoking cigarettes and chatting in like a little like a diner or something like a kind of
right.
nice bar talking about you know how many girls are going to meet in Chile and stuff like that.
Yeah, so no, I really enjoyed how these characters were all set. I really like the actor that played Gaston, like the
Hmm.
red haired. Very, he's not in this for very long, but he's very charming. They sort of lead you on, I guess, maybe they're thinking he's going to be in longer, but
But no,
unfortunately, no.
doesn't last too
So,
long.
no. So, yeah, we have Numa, who is our protagonist slash narrator.
Hmm.
He's sort of convinced by his friends to go to Chile for the weekend. So, he decides to go off, and that's when all hell breaks loose. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the crash scene was so harrowing. Just the buildup of it, right? Because you have the exposition of the mechanic, who I believe his
Hmm.
name is Roque, like, explaining, how dangerous it is to pass through the Andes, right?
Hmm.
And then you start seeing like the turbulence, like
Yeah, yeah,
violently shaking the plane more and more. And then just
yeah.
the buildup of it, like just the increasing violence, but just like I don't know. What are your thoughts before I continue?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, yeah, like this is the scene that is where you remember who Bayona is as a director because the thing is, this movie is way better than I mean, the only other Bayona film I've seen is Jurassic World. So this is the same director that gave us, and
Right,
so like you know, this is the scene where you're like, right. This is an action director. Like he knows how to do this stuff,
right.
you know, with the plane crash. Um, And so, like, yeah, and it looks great. Actually, I mean, it looks better than most of Jurassic World does. So, I mean, but yeah, and you get a sense of just how brutal and awful the crash is. You see like legs getting caved in because of the chairs and shit. Like it's pretty.
God, just like the tail getting completely ripped off. You hear the wire, the metal twisting, bones snapping.
Yeah, which is also an important detail too, that it split in half in midair, because that's going to become a major plot point later on, as they are only in half of the plane and they need to get to the other half eventually.
Right. Yeah. Unbelievably brutal. And then the aftermath, great as well. Just seeing people in hysterics like that. There's this one guy that starts screaming, "I don't want anybody else to die. I don't want anybody else to die." Which I think like just perfect. That's so perfect, because that just shows that you're not thinking at that moment of this immense trauma. You're just reacting. You're just feeling. Yeah. You're just feeling like he just. It's such a perfect moment, capturing just the sheer distress of the situation. It's so good. First night, unbelievably brutal. I wrote this down in my notes. I really like that Bayona is very, very straightforward in how he portrays death in this film, because you have like all these survivors, and amazing makeup, by the way. These guys look fucked up after this.
Yeah.
But you have like a shot of like Numa, and I believe his friend's name is Poncho. They're huddled together, and then there's this guy who's like, his face is swollen. He's like really, really injured, and he's just going, "Ayuda, Ayuda, help me, help me, help me." And this and like scene transitions, still on his face, but he's completely still. Like Bayona is very direct in how he shows death.
He does really like also like those cuts like that, those harsh cuts like that, where it's not a harsh cut. It's like, looking at the same object or something, and then it cuts to a new setting or whatever.
Right.
Like the later on, the brutality of like the wind or whatever. It'll do some scenes with that, but like with that, you see someone die in that quick, like cut from them being alive to them just being like frozen.
I don't know. It really helps like emphasize like like how bad this situation is, and just the cost of this situation. I believe that there was like a number of people died that first night because they were just so injured.
Yeah.
And then, you have the scene of them like hauling out the bodies, and you just see the list of people and their names and ages.
Yeah. I liked that detail throughout it too. Whenever somebody dies, it shows their name and their age next to it. And like you had mentioned, this movie uses the actual names of the actual people rather than fictionalizing it in the way Alive kind of does. So it's a real name when you see that.
Yeah. See, there's a lot of, I don't know if you picked up, there's a lot of Christ imagery in this.
Yeah, there is.
I mean, the religion in this is very present. I think that there's a lot of blink and you miss it moments with religious references.
Yeah.
Like when they're hauling Nando out and he's like really hurt and he's in a coma, and they're lifting him out of the fuselage. That really, I don't know, it really brought back images to me of like the Stations of the Cross.
Yeah.
How he's how they're lifting Jesus into the tomb, but instead they're lifting Nando out of the fuselage so he can survive. Really amazing that this guy survived. Apparently from what I read in my research, they apparently took him out of the fuselage in this freezing weather, and that kept his brain from swelling, and that's how he lived.
That's really, wow. Yeah.
So you start seeing in the aftermath is like how the survivors are sort of grappling with the situation. Like you have Marcelo, who's the team captain. He's very much like, he's the captain of the Old Christians. He's very much, to me, the moral center of the group.
Yeah.
He's like very much the guy who's like, we gotta wait. Guys, have faith. Don't. He's very against eating the flesh. Very much, he tries to keep the group together. And there's just like this slow breakdown of hope as well during this time. And you can see it through him.
Yeah, I think it does a good job of slowly seeing how hopeless the situation is, and It's pretty early on too. They also end up hearing, I mean, it's within the first 10 days, they end up hearing is it the radio or something they're able to
Yeah, the
get?
radio announcement. That was such a brutal
Yeah.
scene because you have them like screaming and then like
That's where
yeah.
those Terrence Malick kind of things I was like the wide angle lens is getting shoved right up in someone's face. Like that's the scene where it happens because yeah, the radio announces, oh yeah, it's 10 days have passed. We're not searching for him anymore.
Yeah.
Goodbye. And then they're all screaming and it just
Yeah.
and
It
then
cuts to music and then it's like the world is going on without you. They don't care if you're alive.
yeah, it's just yep.
The avalanche scene also pretty
Horrifying.
brutal.
Yeah. So yeah, at some point, I mean, so they make the conscious decision eventually, like not everyone participates, but they do make the decision to start eating people slowly. I know that happens before the avalanche. And that yeah, and it's kind of interesting because the people who don't eat aren't necessarily going like fuck you for eating.
Yeah.
To the other people, they're just like I'm not going to do it. But like there isn't as much tension as I feel like you would expect in that sense. You know what I mean? Like there's a formation of like a certain solidarity going on where like people who aren't going to eat human meat are also like, but they're probably hungry enough that they understand why somebody would do it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. No.
And then, yeah, of course the avalanche happens.
That's a rough scene. And that kills Marcelo. Sadly. That kills a lot of people.
Yeah, and it happens in a moment where they're all hanging out and it's like a good moment. It's like there's like this solidarity and then just fucking
nowhere.
Everyone's buried.
Yeah. Oh, we didn't talk about like the first expedition they go on as well.
That's right.
That happens a little bit before the avalanche. And I think it's Numa and Gustavo is his name, and then there's a third guy. That's a pretty I mean it's a pretty impactful scene because like they're looking for the tail and they find just bodies of their friends. They find poor Gaston. I gotta say, the scene of them being huddled on the mountain and then like waking up in the morning and you just see that like I think his name is Gustavo. He's gone snowblind. That like made me feel physically sick. Like seeing that snow. God.
Yeah.
What a terrifying
experience. Yeah. And so they're in this like trying to get to the other end, to the other side, the tail of the plane. Because there's maybe batteries there's maybe supplies there, but these expeditions, it's just they're really difficult to fucking climb several mountains and get there. So they're kind of training almost at this point. Realize they're stuck here until they can get out. So, they're trying to like climb the mountains every day. It seems like to try to build up the muscle or whatever to be able to do it. And so, it seems like things are progressing well until, of course, eventually the avalanche happens, kills several of them, and basically buries the airplane that they were able to hang out in.
That leads to other unfortunate events. This is semi-related, but I find it was a very interesting decision to have Numa Turcotte be the protagonist of this movie.
I really liked this detail too, actually, because it's so the narrator, I mean, we're spoiling the whole movie, so there. Numa's not one of the people who survived. So it's the narration is happening from one of the people who died.
I think it's like Numa's death is really sad because he was the last person to die. Like he survived everything else.
He was so close.
Yeah, he almost made it. But I think that also just speaks to the effectiveness of this film is that Bayona really makes you like miss somebody that you don't know.
Right.
And it's not like Numa's death is in vain. I mean, even like how he injures himself because he eventually dies of an infection, but that was done to sort of save the group. He injured himself and found a way out of the plane of their, they were buried twice in an avalanche.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Oh, right. Because he gets that injury. Is it from like kicking out a window or something?
Yeah,
he was.
Yeah, and he cuts himself on the glass.
And long term, that infection kills him. I think what I really was struck by with that too is I think that was a smart way of telling the story, because with Alive, the main protagonist for the most part is Nando, if I remember correctly. It's the two that got through the mountains at the end. And so when you tell the story with them as the focal point, then it's a story about man's triumph over nature.
Right.
It's that. As when you make the story from the perspective of one of the people who didn't make it out, you're putting it from the perspective of the weaker ones and whatever. And there's a really beautiful scene because Numa is trying to is hiking with them in these expeditions trying to get back, and then eventually he passes out while he's walking, right. And he makes the self-sacrifice to let the other two keep walking and find the plane while he makes tries to hobble his way back.
Right.
And he does get back, and there's a really beautiful scene while he's back where he's talking to, I don't remember, someone else, and there's this conversation about like, you're not useless because you're weak in this situation. And that's the message that gets to come out of choosing to make the protagonist not one of the people that makes it, rather than making it from the perspective of the person that that gets out at the end. It identifies with the victims. I think that was a smart move. Yeah.
There's a lot of Catholic imagery around his death as well. Mm-hmm. I realized. I think that before actually I go into the Catholic imagery surrounding his death, I think that Bayona is not endorsing any sort of specific like belief, or you know what I mean, like, well, actually this is triumph of the human will, or belief in God. I think he's showing like what
different people are
attaching themselves to. Like Arturo, for example, he's injured and he says like, well, I don't believe in your God, I believe in the God of Nando's legs and Roberto's head and the Stouch twins' hands.
Which I don't know if this is a case or not, but something that my my girlfriend pointed out about that, Kelly pointed out about this scene, was that there's a little bit of like socialism coded or like communist coded, the kind of more militant atheist wing of that in that monologue a little bit, because it's like, no, I don't, maybe don't have faith in God, but I have like faith in my fellow man, faith in our solidarity. It's very, very kind of Soviet atheist kind of. I don't know.
It's very interesting that after Arturo dies, they do like sort of pan in on the crucifix that he's wearing, though. Mm-hmm. Very, I don't know what message. Well,
it's because it's kind of both, and I don't know. I don't hate his monologue. Like,
no,
it's actually I don't even think it's fully anti-religious, even though it sounds like it is at first glance, because it's more like I see a spirituality in this grounded material circumstance, in our love for each other, in our
it's like,
and I liked that.
I really liked that monologue. So that is sort of one sort of perspective of something you're hanging on to, that you're believing in to get yourself through that situation. This film, very Catholic, which makes sense because from what I read, everybody on board this plane was a Roman Catholic. So obviously a lot of Catholic imagery, a lot of subtle Catholicism in this as well. I mentioned to you this before, but they really Numa sort of is depicted as this sort of saint. Or at least this was my interpretation, sort of like this Catholic martyr. I mean, even in like one of his last scenes with Roberto, when he, touches Roberto's forehead with his thumb and a little bit of blood goes on Roberto's forehead. To me, that was sort of like anointing him.
Oh, that's a good point. I didn't catch that. That is a very loaded image. One of the images that I was waiting to happen and it didn't really, and so I wonder if it's just like being implied but never said, because you mentioned in the real case they explicitly said this in the actual case, which is the Eucharist comparison with the cannibalism, or the anthropophagy, or however you want to say it. I don't know, like I there was something kind of consistent to that, like it felt like it was getting gestured at, but it just never did it. Like
Mm.
I wanted a case where like the person, one of the ones who's cutting it, the meat, comes in or delivering it, and like was individually giving a piece to each one, like Eucharist or something,
Right.
for a second. I would really wanted that image, but they didn't do
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
it.
if
Cool.
Bayona decided to just eat that out just because like
It would maybe
people might find that
freaking out
offensive.
the normies.
Yeah. That National Review article would have been way angrier. I got
We'll have to go back to
Yeah,
the
we'll have
National
to go
Review.
back to yeah. But Enzo von Greenchick's portrayal of Numa in this was unbelievable.
It's really well
Really,
done.
oh man, I hope this guy gets in so many roles after this. He's fantastic. And I mean, and also he's not the only one. Matthias Ricault, I believe his name is also fantastic in this as Robert Kines. Like all the cast is so good in this. Everybody is just the panic, the confliction, the just amazing performances overall. You really just you really just have this visceral feeling just watching them on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just so good. I mean, when Numa dies, and I really like this. Bayona made this decision as well because if this had been an American film, I think you would have had like a shot of Numa like slowly closing his eyes, right, and just drifting away. But Bayona does not do that. He just hard cuts to Numa's body.
Yeah.
Just to show that he's one of the dead now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an incredible scene where like they take the note out of his hand, and it's a passage from John. There is no greater love than laying one's life down for one's friends.
Right.
God, I cried so hard during that scene.
No, yeah, it's a fantastic scene, and of course it is kind of it is very much them laying it out in his life, because at this point this is also the moment when the two or three people, the ones who got out, Nando and Roberto, like they realize like this is when they decide to try to cross the Andes, and not just so they as we mentioned, they got to the tail at one point, right after Numa turned around. Actually, they just went a few more hours and they found the tail of the and so they messed with the battery, they tried to get signals out, they fucked with everything, and just nothing was really working. And so finally, after Numa's death is the moment when Nando and Roberto decide, we're just gonna fucking go across the Andes, we're just gonna hike, we're just gonna do it and see if we can get people to come back and save everyone.
Yeah, I mean, and not only is his death sort of a catalyst for the other survivors to live. Not only is his death powerful in that sense, but I also liked Bayona's decision to keep him as the narrator after he died. Like his spirit continues to narrate.
Yeah, because the voice continues to come back, and then to jump ahead, kind of crescendos in the final monologue of him being able to say that when they get back, when people are trying to get rehabilitated, they're going to be completely changed by this forever, and so in a sense they remain dead like me, is like the kind of final
very very Catholic sentiment. It's a very bittersweet ending, I will have to say. It's very because you're happy that the survivors are out and that like 16 people lived, but you're also thinking about the 29 that didn't. I mean, like Numa's death to me left a hole, like right, because you've been following him for so long, and now you're following Roberto and Nando, the rest of it. So you really feel the loss, like the hole that all of these people who died left behind through him. It's unbelievable narration. Unbelievable narrative style.
I think it's fantastic. So of course those two they get through the Andes through kind of a long, brutal hiking process, and then they eventually run into someone once they get out of the Andes, and they're able to get help. The remaining survivors back at the plane get to hear over the radio their names get read off of the survivors, and then the helicopter comes, picks them up, and we get like what I like about this, because Alive, I don't recall it having as much on this, is there's still like another solid 20
Mm.
minutes about them getting rehabilitated back into the world again after that
Right.
experience,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
like a little more than it doesn't just end
Mm.
with victory, which is kind of
Right.
like where Alive is kind of how it ends.
Yeah. Woo, we did it.
If I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like that Bayona doesn't really give you any closure over any of the deaths, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know, you're waiting for a send off for Numa or for Coco or somebody like that, and you're not really getting it. Like even in that last shot where I believe it was Gustavo who's collecting all of like the tokens of everybody who died. Like the last shot is not like Numa's name; it's Marcelo's, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, toward the end, you see like there's just the bones everywhere from all the having to eat
Mm.
people that has taken place, which I think is
Oh
kind of a
man,
harrowing chunk.
yeah,
When they're taking photos, and one of them briefly puts a like a one of the luggage cases over some bones to cover it
yeah.
up, and
It's
yeah.
it's brutal. It's very. So
Hmm.
you're just like, oh man, is this one of the characters? I mean, one of the individuals I was following and rooting for, you know.
Yeah, now it's just a pile of
It's
bones.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But great film overall.
Hmm.
Definitely one I recommend if you ever want to feel like you've been punched in the stomach.
Yep,
Um
yep. Want something really harrowing. Well, yeah. This film has started some discourses on kind of in the Spanish speaking world, as we've talked about. One of the notable ones that I had run into was kind of a whole little culture war thing about a member of the Chamber of Senators of Uruguay, Mario Bergara, had a tweet that I wasn't intended to be super critical of this movie, but he just also pointed out that this is a movie about rich upper
right.
class,
Right.
folks. And then it turned into some culture war because the right was like, can you believe it? They can't enjoy a damn movie without this
This is
fucking
really
wokeness.
this really shows complete American cultural victory that we've just exported all of our neuroses into South America. Um,
Yeah, it's he also was like I'm proud of them, proud that they're Uruguayans. He also threw all that in there, but he just
mm,
also pointed out that they are elites, and
right.
this was apparently you're not supposed to point that out. So even though the movie itself kind of points that out, as we made
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah, it very much establishes that these are people of privilege. I was talking to you earlier. I think yeah, there is like we have the idea that yes, these are, wealthy men, we're and that's in their status, you know, possibly does probably does play a factor into why we can't stop looking or like fixating on the story, but also that humans have this big, very like eternal romance
Hmm.
with what we call in informatics immediate crisis, and these are the types of crises that are a massive disruption on the status quo. They're crises that are you can't prepare for. They're simultaneous. They're usually natural or man-made. But the defining factor of these is that they are over very quickly,
Hmm.
and you can't really do anything about it. Like we can't bring Numa Turcati back from the dead, or any of the other
Yeah.
28 back from the dead. Everything everything that anybody could have done in that situation is over. And compare that to something like Gaza, or the violence going on in South America since
Yeah.
60s 70s into present day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Specifically the violence that would happen a year after the events of this movie, right?
right. Yeah. And I think that a part of that is that we just prefer admiring scars than being forced to gaze at festering wounds,
Hmm.
because we can't one of them we can't really do anything about, and one the powers that be sort of prevent us from doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
from trading it, essentially. So
yeah, but a story about people coming together, surviving hard circumstances, and eventually getting out that's an easier narrative to digest than the multifaceted and awful ways that like power function, for instance, where it's not like that immediate crisis, like you said, like surviving a hurricane. There might be some politics to an immediate crisis, but like it's the politics are not front stage in like what happens. Like the politics are maybe, we gestured at like the US selling shitty products to South America, resulted in this tragedy. There's a politics to that, but there's not really a politics to the once the plane crashes, how do we handle this? You know what I mean?
exactly.
Yeah. And so it's a much easier narrative to kind of deal with than like how do you make sense of a bunch of capitalists influenced by Milton Friedman and a bunch of military guys choosing to work together to kill everybody in this.
Right.
It's a harder thing to deal with.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's the same principle as like we're fascinated by the Halifax disaster, but nobody really cares about the fact that a bunch of minority communities like were also blown away and were basically essentially kicked out. So, it's the same principle.
You also mentioned that was there some like political shit that happened at the Goyas? Or was it not political? I can
political.
cut that and we can bring it back.
Yeah. I mean, Bayona, it seems he might have come out as gay.
At the Goyas?
Yeah, like he kissed his boyfriend or something. I couldn't find any official. Congratulations, Bayona. I mean, on your wins. I believe it was like a historic. Like they won. They swept the Goyas.
Yeah,
They won 12 out of 13 of their nominations.
That's awesome.
Bravo, Bayona. Good job. If only the Oscars were a bit more kinder.
You also was it also there's like some conspiracy theories that were springing up about this shit too?
Oh yeah, that happened in mid-January. There was like,
okay.
It wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was like one 70-year-old Chilean mountaineer who was like, it was like, these guys are not heroes.
Wasn't he
they stayed on the mountain. They stayed on the mountain for book deals. They chose for clout. They lied to all of you.
It's so fucked up.
I've hated these guys for 50 years because I know they lied. Can you imagine?
That rules.
Yeah. Then how do you explain like the dead, the people who are dying on I think I might be dying of infection. No, dude, just a few more days, bro. We're gonna get so much. We're just getting.
You do not understand how much money we're gonna make from this book deal. Let me tell you, they're gonna make at least 2 movies about this.
So horrible. Sorry, we're going to hell.
Well, so I think that's kind of. I mean, is that most of the political components to the discourse?
Yeah. I gotta say, I learned a lot of Latin American cultural inside baseball from this because I was just seeing the comments that were like, "Oh, the Chileans are mad. They're not the protagonists of reality again. Chileans not beating the allegations, bro." I'm like, what do you mean?
I guess
dude, I feel like we're a
stereotype.
We're like a pair of like fat slovenly Romans that are like looking at like the Galileans and like observing their like, what do you mean the Chileans think they're protagonists of reality? What?
Well, that's kind of the unfair balance that we always that kind of just comes out of the world order as it currently is. It's like everyone's forced to fucking know the difference between like French and German.
Right.
But then like nobody knows the difference. Like nobody in the US seems to like really know the difference between like Chilean and Nicaraguan or something like that, Oh
yeah.
It's a power imbalance
they
kind of
have
thing.
They have to know everything about American history. That was another thing is like one of the actors from Society of the Snow apparently got into some major beef with American Twitter.
What happened with that?
Oh God. Okay, so one of the Argentine actors, I think his handle is like Juanicar or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's also a streamer. Apparently like he made he just decided to piss off American Twitter because he like saw this post of like Coleman Domingo and America Ferrera, and it was like the Academy going, "This is the first time 2 Latino actors have been nominated in this category," and he comments, "Latinos where?"
Oh no.
Yeah, it was bad.
Oh no.
And then
Buddy, no.
oh god, and then yeah, it got very brutal in that somebody apparently retweeted that, and they had searched his account for tweets that he made in 2013, which I'm going to leave to your imagination, Josiah, about what a young Argentine 13-year-old would be saying in 2013. What words he might have picked up on that he may or may not know the context of.
Oh, good. Very good.
And
well, as we know, things have been very normal in Argentina for the last few decades. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So good.
They elected Reddit president over there, I've heard. So
good. Yeah. Yeah. So I gotta say that Discord, I do remember, because I know that like some of our mutuals started to notice that discourse, but I do know it spiraled out of control because the Americans were like trying to dunk on this guy, but they did not realize how many shooters Wanakar had. And again, I don't know his full name. I'm just using his handle. I think his name's like Juan. I'm sorry to any listeners. I'm a dumb gringo. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. They didn't realize how many like Argentine shooters this guy had. So like they're like, trying to dunk on him, and they're getting ratioed with infographics of Operation Condor.
No.
Yeah. And just like the comment, "Do not let the gringos rewrite history."
Yeah. I would see this is the kind of discourse you shouldn't touch with a fucking like 10-foot pole. Like, Jesus Christ, no.
Dude, I love South Americans. Just don't give a fuck. Like, they don't care if they offend. They're like, "No, fuck you, Yankee." I do remember there was like somebody on the American side that was like, "Who is this guy? Why does he have so many shooters?" And I was like the Paul Dano Riddler. I made that face. I made that "does she know" face.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm like one of the few Americans that has like the secret forbidden knowledge of this situation.
Well, yeah. What other discourses here? You said this has gotten unhinged.
This has gotten really unhinged. I don't know. Do you want to go into the National Review article on the subject of penetrating American consciousness? But we could go into the fanfare about this film.
Since we're kind of still vaguely in the realm of politics, let's talk about the National Review's take on this, and then we can get into the fanfare.
I gotta say, I was at work, and I was like looking around because I was doing a little bit. It was my lunch break. I was doing a little bit more research, and I gotta say, when I saw that National Review posted a review of this movie, my fist went up in the air in pure joy, Josiah.
Well, because they're gonna actually have a take. Because I read some of the other reviews of it in the English press, like English speaking press thus far, and it's always been things like, "Wow, this is a movie. It sure does show how things are awful if you're stuck in the Andes." But like National Review, they're gonna find a way to make this about wokeness or something. It's gonna be good.
I was very sad it was not written by Armand. I would have loved it. God, if this had been an Armand White review,
man,
you're gonna have to cut this part out. But like, the plane of culture slammed into the mountain of wokeness and caused us to cannibalize each other.
Why? I don't want to cut that. That is Armand White. That is the most Armand White thing I've ever.
Again,
ever heard.
I'm not endorsing this. I'm not making light of the situation that occurred here.
Yeah.
I just know what he would have said.
No, that's just a very good impression of Armand White. Yeah. Oh
God, it made. Let me see if I can get the National Review article up.
Is it More Dead Than Alive?
Yeah, it's More Dead Than Alive. I got it on my phone. This movie remake on the famous Andes plane crash fails in its attempt to draw meaning from suffering.
Oh, good. All right. Well, why don't you tell us how you derive meaning
Yeah,
from suffering,
yeah.
Madeline Kearns?
You probably know the story. On October 13th, 1972, a Uruguayan plane carrying the Old Christians Club rugby team crashed into the Andes on its way to Chile. Wait, I'm gonna skip ahead. We just went over the story. Not long after their rescue, the testimony of their survivors was collected by writer Piers Paul Reed, then a 31-year-old British novelist, who in 1974 published the narrative nonfiction book Alive, the story of the Andy survivors. At times, I was tempted to fictionalize certain parts of the story because this might have added to their dramatic impact, but in the end, I decided that the bare facts were sufficient to sustain narrative. When I returned on October 1973 to show them the manuscript of the book, some of them were disappointed by my presentation of the story. They felt that the faith and friendship which inspired them in the Cordillera did not emerge from these pages. It was never my intention to underestimate these qualities, but perhaps it would be beyond the skill of any writer to express their own appreciation of what they lived through. Oh my God. In 1993, a Hollywood adaptation of Reed's account was made in the movie Alive, which emphasized faith, friendship, and heroism. This, please.
What? What? Not any more or any less than Society of the Snow does. What?
This pleased the survivors. I don't know if that's completely true. Yet some qualities displeased some critics who felt the movie skimped over the characters' personalities. The more comprehensive, the more recent Netflix Spanish language. I like that she refers to it as a remake of Alive in this.
Yeah, I wouldn't
I wouldn't call this a remake of Alive at all.
Like,
I think it's just
a lot of the same events happen because they're both based off the same
Same
actual thing that took place.
God, this if this is why people are like not watching this film because they think it's an Alive remake, we have lost culture, dude. We've lost. They think that this is like the Andes cinematic universe or something. God. If Reed's account and the movie spin-off are titled Alive, then Bayona's Society of the Snow, based on Pablo Vierci's 2008 book of the same name, might be better titled Dead.
Why?
Society of the Snow intends to pay tribute to the dead, but it memorializes their deaths more than their lives.
What?
Take the character of Liliana, a young wife and mother who survived the crash and died weeks later, along with 7 others during the avalanche. In the 1993 film Alive, Liliana is vibrant and maternal. She tells her husband that their brush with death in the plane crash has given her a new appreciation of the value of life and a desire to have another child. Is that real?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that does happen. Actually, now that I think about it,
that's a very American move to just be like,
yeah, that is. Well, like, does Kearns not see that? Like, I might be wrong here, but if that isn't the case and they made up that detail about her, that is way grosser.
Yeah, that's very. In Society of the Snow, Liliana is more a prop than a character. What? I didn't really get that vibe at all because you can see her like nursing like some of the young men. Like she's comforting like one of the guys who's like starving to death.
No, this is a review just by a dumb person. It's just because she doesn't look at the camera and say, "Hi, I'm a character."
Okay, wait. Her husband says how during the avalanche he felt a surge of love for her lifeless corpse and realized that he had a purpose to take that love home and bring it to my kids back home, end quote. Oh, now we're getting to the real meat.
Here we go.
Religion hangs in the backdrop. At the beginning of the movie, we see the team at Mass as the priest reads the gospel, man shall not live in bread alone, clearly foreshadowing events to come. Scripture appears later with an invocation of John 15:13. No greater love has a man than this, that he should lay down life for his friends. Survivors make the sign of the cross and pray.
Yeah.
But the most important themes are undeveloped or contradicted.
Whoa. Are you telling me that there's a problem of evil?
Yeah,
maybe there's a tension Sometimes between the belief in a benevolent God and awful things happening.
Yeah.
And it's trying to wrestle with that? I don't know.
In deciding to eat the dead, the survivors compare the practice to organ donation. In Alive, we learn that the Catholic group made a theological comparison with the Eucharist.
I don't remember that being said in Alive, actually. I might be wrong. It was a few. I saw it like last year, but
okay. The survivors made sense of their the mysterious reality is that if everyone had survived the initial crash, then everyone would have also died of hunger. Thus, the deaths of some enabled the survival of others. The survivors made sense of this in their belief that who lived and who died was for God alone to decide, as is made clear in the 1993 movie, when the pilot, suffering terribly from his injuries, begs the others to shoot him. They refuse, praying with and comforting the dying instead. In Society of the Snow, the faith is articulated less in a God who redeems suffering and his providence, and less in the human spirit and their own efforts. And then she gets really mad at what Arturo says, which I'm not going to read here.
Oh,
survivors complain that the state...
Of course,
The survivors complain that the state they're in isn't alive, end quote, and that they, quote, won't make it just by praying, as if anyone said they would. When Canessa and Parado admire their trek, the view on their trek for rescue, Canessa says it's a shame their appreciation for the natural beauty is in vain. Quote, too bad we're dead. He literally said that, though. That's something that's well documented historical evidence.
So what she's a fan of is when they make up shit about the people.
Yeah.
But when they say what they actually did, then that's not cool.
Repetitive sequences of the survivors clambering up the mountainside, wading through snow, and squinting into the sun add little in the way of narrative momentum, and in an hour or so in, the movie begins to drag. Our narrator, Numa, dies with an hour of the movie still to go, and nevertheless continues to be the narrator.
That's the point. That's the point.
You don't interpret that as his spirit prevailing? You know, his spirit going on?
That's the whole
point. Okay. He describes the survivors' homecoming as overwhelming, explaining that they, quote, don't feel like heroes because, quote, they were dead like us, only they got to return home. As for what it all means, he explains, you'll need to find out for yourself. None of the philosophical musings are ever made coherent, never mind resolved. Society of the Snow doesn't have the confidence.
Because man, this is making me like the movie more. Because now I'm like, well, yeah, because it's a problem of, it's one of the themes in it. It's a problem of evil movie, and this is a consistent thing in like writings about like why the problem of evil is the problem of evil is because it demolishes your moral systems. It's an epistemological crisis philosophically, right? And so, yeah, you do have to just go, I don't know, man. That's make of it what you do. Like it's awful, and you have to figure out what it means for yourself. Like that's just.
I love this line. Society of the Snow doesn't have the confidence to assert nihilism, but neither does it seriously engage with the Catholicism on which many of the survivors relied.
I think it engages with it better.
Yeah, it very much
does.
Yeah, far better. I think this was a very Catholic. Man, I love American conservatives, man. One quick thing. Does anybody
quick detail though? Not an American conservative. The author is from Scotland, actually.
She's a Scottish. Oh, she's Scottish. Okay, well, Anglosphere conservative, right?
Yeah.
By the way, does anybody at National Review like any movie? Can I just say?
Truly, I wonder that too, because you know the thing is, this movie is pretty apolitical, right? And the whole time I'm thinking, like, yeah, this is such a desperate attempt to try to find like a take on it, and the best that she can do is remember, well, there was a movie made about the same event in the '90s that had more white people, so it has to be better.
Yeah, I gotta say, conservatives, man, they literally just can't. They don't have imaginations. They don't understand subtlety. They need like fucking, Roberto or Numa to look at the camera and be like, by the way, my faith in Jesus Christ is the thing that's
what's getting me through today.
Yeah, I'm getting through. Hey, by the way, this plane wouldn't have crashed if the anti-pope John XX or whatever it was, who it was, did not suppress Latin Mass in 1968.
That's right. The real crime here is Vatican II, if you think about it. Yeah. No, it's like what I was gonna say is like the Society, so it's a pretty, all things considered, pretty apolitical movie. If anything, I feel like I could imagine conservatives rallying around the movie, because we know this damn well, like we mentioned with the political stuff, in the Latin, like in the Spanish speaking world, it was that a left-wing senator criticized the movie and the right-wing stance is, oh fuck you, they don't they can't appreciate a good story about good Catholic boys. That's the take there. You would think that's the take that maybe like a smarter National Review writer would do. Is be like, oh, the commies in the pink tide commies of Latin America are trying to cancel this movie. Like that's how you do. Like I would be a better fucking National Review writer than these people.
Armand White, they're trying to make the Andes tragedy woke. Oh God, I want to put a gun in my mouth saying that. But
no, I feel like the best conservative angle with this movie, especially because there isn't enough English speaking discourse about it, like you've mentioned, is to say, why no one's talking about it is because they're too scared of the Catholicism in it. They're, the wokes don't like this movie because it's religious.
Right.
That would be the angle. That's a way better conservative angle.
That's such a good conservative angle. Oh God, that's so good.
Instead of complaining that it's not religious enough.
Yeah. But outside of the godless Anglosphere, we are seeing this become a massive cultural phenomenon in Latin America. As I've told, what a deranged situation this is. We find ourselves in, Josiah, because I don't even know how tonally to approach this, just because of how horrible this event is, and then just the insanity that has overtaken Spanish-speaking social media over this.
Well, they made the mistake of casting a bunch of attractive men in a movie.
That's true.
And you even see one of their dongs at one point. I mean, come on, you were begging for this to happen.
Oh my God. That's true. Oh God. That's so true. That's very true. But that's what it's just so fascinating to sort of watch in a bubble. If you know what I mean, like just to be this uninvolved observer of this,
of like a discourse.
Yeah. Because I've like, you see the movie and it's so rough. And I'm seeing TikToks, edits. I saw one. I saw this Chilean Etsy that was like selling like playing cards of the actors' faces, which I respect that hustle. I gotta say,
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that the actor who played Numa is like an overnight star from this movie, right?
Yeah, he is. Oh my God. He's got 2 million followers on Instagram this past month.
And this was like his first role, right? Something like that?
Yeah, I think he was in one independent film before this. But yeah, this is his first major theatrical role. And he's just become an overnight sensation. He's like the Uruguayan James Dean. I've never seen anything like this. Just women. I showed you the photographs. Just women throwing themselves at him. Just like people mobbing the cast. In these special screenings in Madrid. People just screaming for Enzo von Greenschik. Just. It's insane. I've never seen anything like this, especially over a movie of this subject.
That's what's weird about it, because it's not like with Saltburn, say what you will about it, whether it's a good movie or not. I again haven't seen it, I don't have my take yet, but it is also a movie that does have weird sex stuff happen in it, and also the character get naked at some point, which I'm aware of because of the fandom shit. Makes sense then that there will be that. This is a movie that's like pretty harrowing.
Yeah.
And even the scene I jokingly referenced of you see a guy's dog, it's like, yeah, but it's when he's getting showered off.
Yeah.
After, and you're seeing him like just bones and flesh, just in a horrible state. It's not like, oh hell yeah, so hot. You know what I mean? Like it's a horrifying scene.
It's terrible. Yes, I do get it though, because Enzo is very handsome. Sure. I mean, they all are.
Right. Yeah, they're.
No, I get it.
Yeah, it's an interesting like case of fandom or whatever. Like I think it's probably not as morally disgusting as like people fangirling for like serial killers or school shooters or something like that. But there feels like a similar energy to it. But I think it's less fucked up because it's at least a victim, not oh, I could have changed 10 Buddy or something like that. It's not that, but it is like. Him. It is still like, I don't know. I don't understand people's desire to look at a horrible, tragic situation and be like, oh man, I would wish I was romantically involved with this situation somehow.
Yeah. In their defense, I've seen like most of the fanfare is just around the cast. I guess the filmmaking of the film is, there's always going to be people that like push, like whenever media of a historical event comes out, like no matter what, there's always going to be somebody who's going to push it too far, right?
Yeah,
you're gonna have like fan fictions about, oh god, this is cursed. Fan fictions about Roberto Canessa coming home to you or whatever. I feel like that's like I feel like that's just like younger people who can't really like separate the fiction from the reality, like the Roberto Canessa of history versus the Matthias Recalt of faith,
right, but like like if you're young, you're not sure to process the fact that Numa is being played by a really, really attractive man, and so then you get to fantasize like, well, I would have climbed the Andes and saved him. I'd be built different. I would have been in Santiago and I would have just sensed that there was something going on over in the mountains.
Yeah, I've walked 11 days and carried him down.
No, the fangirling over the survivors of this makes me think of I said this off mic, but it makes me think of this James Acaster bit,
right?
That like he does in Repertoire. That's, I don't know, like he pretends like there's a bunch of like celebrity gossip about the Chilean miners that got out of the Chilean miner cave in that like 2010 story.
Right.
Like that he's like, oh, there's the one that's the troublemaker or one that's like the pretty boy. And he's like building this fake mythology around them. And it's so funny that bit is now what's actually kind of happening online.
Yeah.
With survivors of this plane crash.
Yeah. I love this shit, bro. I love it. It's great. No, you know what? I support it. I mean, I support people being fans of this movie. Just be normal about it. Don't be weird. Don't DM Roberto Canessa on Instagram. He's 70 years old. He's married.
Leave him alone.
Yeah.
I mean,
let him play golf or tennis or.
I mean, it has to fuck you up really bad to like, even though it was like pretty much as ethical as cannibalism could be, this situation was.
Right.
And still, there has to be something fucked up to both know that you did engage in it, and also that most of the world knows you did.
Yeah.
Like,
that would screw
that's
me
what
up.
your name, if anyone knows your name, they know it's because you're the guy that got stuck in the Andes and eventually had to eat his friend.
Yeah.
That would suck. That would
really suck. What do you feel like you would do in this situation, Josiah?
Be dead.
Be dead? Well, I don't think I would have been able to have the mental fortitude. I think I would have just gone insane on the second day. Just thrown myself off the mountainside.
Yeah. I kept joking to Kelly while we were watching it that I was like, I could have been fine. But that's not remotely true. I would have been dead, like, in the plane crash.
Right.
I would have been, like, mid eating a peanut on the flight or something and then choked on it while we're going down. Would not.
That's a
very impressive to them that they survived this situation, because I would not have survived it.
Yeah. God bless them. I have more complex thoughts about this that are coming out in a Substack article. Hopefully, that will be released.
Related to like the spirituality of it, right?
Right.
The Catholic spirituality. Yeah.
Hopefully, more coherent than I've been on here.
That's okay. I'll if I remember, I'll try to put that in the show notes after you've written it. So if somebody listens to this later, they might be able to find that.
Wonderful. I mean, this is just horrible. This has been a feel bad.
Feel bad time.
Feel bad event of the year.
Yeah, well, this is a pretty solid movie, and it is on Netflix, which most people have usually.
Yeah.
So, and hey, there's not many good Netflix originals, so
Yeah.
you know,
So this
when there
this
is
a great
one,
yeah,
shout
go
out.
after.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to cover about this?
Yankee, fuera Yankee de la cultura. Yankee out of the culture. My cat is like mobbing my.
Yeah, cat's attacking the microphone now.
Yeah, very interesting seeing the dynamics of Empire here, where this is a film that has become a sensation independent of Yankee influence, but also reliant on a Yankee distributor.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's an interesting position. It feels like a situation that's becoming more common too, because I feel like it's usually out of Asia, but I feel like there's been a lot of foreign based like Netflix originals. But yeah. Well, I hope that grows though, because that's one of the things that I think could be good about the streaming era. There's not a lot of good things about the streaming era really, but like one is that we have, in theory, the ability to access stuff from, you know, other national cinemas outside of the US. It's the Bong Joon-ho at the Oscars thing. If you could just overcome that subtitle barrier.
I love that. What else? This is probably my last rendezvous in Stan Twitter. I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, you're out.
The tonal the tone difference between this film and the reaction to it has like driven me insane to a near religious experience. I'm going to like see the image of Thomas Merton like in my doorway very soon, I'm sure.
All right. Well, I guess that's probably moving us toward wrapping up here. Is there anything you want to like plug or whatever? I mean, I think most people that listen to this are already familiar with you, but if they aren't,
I do have a Substack I am working on. JM Kazmirek. That is my new Substack handle. I will be writing on there throughout Lent because I'm not going to be on Twitter. I am hoping to write stuff on theology, non-English foreign media, and information. So check that out if you get a chance.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you everybody for listening, and thank you Finch for joining me. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Fruitless. If you like what you heard, make sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and help us out with the algorithm. And if you really like what you heard, go ahead and check out the Patreon. Link for that is in the show notes. And speaking of Patreon, let's read off the list of our patrons here. They are Men's Room Louie, Joseph Gross, Gavin Aronson, Steven, aka Spike Stonehand, The Worst of All Possible Worlds, Moss, Kyle Gannis, Regular Sized Horse, parentheses, Small, I Am Once Again, Leo Zachary Dickinson, and of course, Chris Barker. Thank you so much, and we will see you later this week, probably. At the very latest, next week.